Good morning to everyone. Myself Dr. Aruna Kumari, Assistant Professor in Agricultural Economics from AHS Department, Vignan University. Today I would like to present on consumer surplus. Consumer surplus. It is based on the theory of demand. Consumer surplus is based on the theory of demand by Marshall in 1895 in his publication Principles of Economics. Consumer surplus means it is nothing but the difference between what he is willing to pay and what he actually pays. Consumer surplus means what he is willing to pay and what he actually pays. What he actually pays. Difference between what he is willing to pay and what he is actually pays. Otherwise, marginal utility total utility minus marginal utility. Total utility minus marginal utility means price into number of units of that commodity. Number of units of that commodity. Assumptions of the consumer surplus. Assumptions. Marginal utility of the money is constant or same. Marginal utility of money is constant or same. Commodity does not have the substitutes. Commodity does not have the substitutes. Substitutes means in the real world so many substitutes are there. Coffee and tea, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Coke and Pepsi, Ashirwad Atta, Cheki Fresh Atta, like that, Bingo chips and Lays chips, so many substitutes are there. There is no differences in tastes, incomes, habits, fashions and preferences. There is no differences in incomes, tastes, habits, preferences, fashions, like that. Each commodity is independent of others. Each commodity is independent of others. I will explain consumer surplus with the help of table and diagram. Table. This is the marginal utility, this is the actual price. Consumer is willing to buy 4 units of the jamun. He will pay for first unit 1 rupee. He will pay for second unit 75 paise. He will pay for third unit 50 paise. He will pay for fourth unit 25 paise. Whereas actual market price is 0.25 paise. 0.25 rupees or 25 paise. We will get consumer surplus by deducting the actual price from he is willing to pay. That means 1 minus 2.5, 0.75 minus 0.2.5, 0.5 minus 0.2.5, like that. By adding all this, we will get total consumer surplus, that is 0.75 plus 0.5 plus 0.2.5, that is 1.5. We will get another way also, that is by adding all total marginal utilities and all actual prices, by deducting total actual price from the total marginal utility also, we will get consumer surplus. This is 2.5, this is 1, 2.5 minus 1 means that is 1.5, that is total consumer surplus is 1.5 rupees. I will explain with the help of diagram. OP is the price.
Just you press red button after I have meeting. Just red. After finishing you.
OP is the price level, OQ is the quantity demanded. At OP price, that is quantity demanded is OQ. OQRA is the total surplus, sorry, total satisfaction. OQ RA is the total satisfaction. Consumer satisfaction or consumer surplus satisfaction we will get by OQ RA minus OQ RP, that is PRA. OQ RA means this one. OQ RP means this one. We will get consumer surplus by deducting the OQRP from OQRA. OQRA minus OQRP, that is consumer surplus, that is nothing but PRA. Difficulties in measuring the consumer surplus. Cardinal measurement of the utility is difficult. Cardinal measurement means, suppose first unit is having the 10 units utility, second unit is having the 5 units utility. It is important to say our differentiation is very difficult. That means cardinal measurement of the utility is very difficult. Cardinal measurement of the utility is very difficult. Marginal utility for the same commodity is different for different consumers. Marginal utility for the same commodity is different for different consumers. Different persons are having the different tastes, different habits, different customs, different fashions, different preferences. So, marginal utility for the same commodity is different for different consumers. That is why difficult to measure the consumer surplus. Existence of the substitutes. We are saying that no substitutes. In the real world, it is not possible. So many substitutes are there in the real world. For each commodity is having the so many substitutes. Marginal utility of the money is not constant. We are assuming that marginal utility of the money is constant, but it is not practically possible. Why means our purchasing power is goes on increasing. Our purchasing power is goes on increasing. Money is with ours is decreasing. Money is with ours is decreasing, and that one is marginal utility of that person is increasing rather than the constant. Marginal utility of that person is increasing rather than the constant. So, the difficult to measure consumer surplus. Lack of awareness of different prices. Lack of awareness of different prices. It is very difficult to estimate the entire demand schedule at a time. It is very difficult to estimate the entire demand schedule at a time or prices prevailing in the market. It is very difficult to know about the prices prevailing in the market is also very difficult. Next. Importance of the consumer surplus. Conjunctural importance. Conjunctural importance. Conjunctural importance means, suppose one person is having the more consumer surplus, it indicates not his better off, it indicates whole economy is better off. Suppose person is enjoying more consumer surplus, enjoying with more consumer surplus, it is indicating not his better off, it is index of indicating whole economy is better off. Useful to the monopolist. Suppose monopolist is commodity is having the high consumer surplus, he will increase the price for processing without hesitating, without thinking his foregoing sales. Useful to the monopolist. Suppose one commodity is having the more consumer surplus, monopolist will increase that commodity price without hesitating the foregoing sales. Helps in public finance and taxation. Helps in public finance and taxation. Suppose one commodity is having the more consumer surplus. Suppose one commodity is having the more consumer surplus, government will leave more tax on that commodity and will get the more revenue from that commodity. Helps in public finance and taxation. Suppose one commodity is having the more consumer surplus, government will leave more taxes on that commodity and get more revenue from that commodity. Helps to measure benefits from international trade. International trade means transaction of the commodities between the countries. Transactions of the commodities between the countries are frontiers. Transaction between countries. Transactions of the commodities between the countries are frontiers. We will import the product or commodity from the international from the international market which is having the less price. That commodity is having the more domestic price, which results in increase the consumer surplus for that commodity. We will import the product from the international market which is having the lower price, and that commodity is having the high domestic price, which results in increasing the consumer surplus for that commodity. Let me give quick recap. First I have explained about consumer surplus definition. Later I have explained, first I have explained about consumer surplus definition. Later assumptions, followed by consumer surplus is explained with the help of table and graph. Followed by difficulties to measure consumer surplus. Difficulties to measure consumer surplus. And finally, I have explained about importance of consumer surplus. Finally, I have explained about importance of consumer surplus. After watching this video, try to solve this quiz also. I will explain quiz. The consumer surplus is based on the theory of. The consumer surplus is based on the theory of. Consumer surplus was introduced by. Consumer surplus was introduced by Alfred Marshall. Consumer surplus was introduced in which year? Consumer surplus was introduced in which year? Consumer surplus is the difference between dash. Consumer surplus is the difference between what consumer is willing to pay minus what he actually pays. What he is willing to pay minus what he actually pays. Consumer surplus is equals to total utility minus marginal utility. Marginal utility means price into number of units of that commodity. Thank you.